Hello, everyone. Hello. Happy Monday. Good to see you all coming in. I see Cherie is getting us all live streamed up everywhere. Hope you all had a good day. We have an amazing guest here this evening. So super excited about tonight. As you come in, please put your city and state in the chat.
Hello, Tawana. Hello, everybody. Good evening. How are you all doing today?
Today is
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
So I confirmed with our guest. He's called me a couple of times. I've called him a couple of times, so he will definitely be on. We're going to talk about buying billions in businesses tonight.
No, I'm super excited about tonight's conversation.
I know. So we have Robin here from Winston-Salem. We've got Wincott, I guess, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. St. Louis is in the house. Hello, everybody.
Happy belated Mother's Day to all of the mothers in 10K. So glad you guys could join us today. Hope you had a wonderful day yesterday.
Yes, I hope so too. So we're going to get started in 1 minute. And Tawana, I'm going to toss it over to you. I'm going to just check and make sure that Joe has the link. So we can get started now, 6 o'clock on the dot.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. Another week here at 10K Project. We're super excited about the lineup we have coming up in the next few months. Tonight is no different. We have an amazing gentleman getting ready to come and talk to us about buying businesses. Many of you know my journey on buying businesses. I've shared that very openly and honestly with you. And I'm so excited for tonight's conversation as I get ready to, here in the next few weeks, close my first deal. This is exciting to be able to talk to someone who has made over $1 billion in revenue from buying businesses. So tonight we're in for a treat. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, we are the 10K Project. My name is Tawana Rivers and my co-founder, Cherie Warwick. Essentially, what we do here is we educate on wealth building and alternative investment opportunities. We focus heavily on equity crowdfunding because we believe the Jobs Act is going to equal and even out the playing field a bit to help our founders gain the capital that they need and to help the everyday investor be able to have a seat at the table and build their portfolio and at the same time potentially building wealth. And so we are so glad to have you all here this evening. And I see our guest is connecting now. Very, very good. All right.
We are all here. Did you give the introduction? I'm sorry.
I did. I told them all who we were and what we were about and what treat we were in for this evening.
Yes, and Talisha has put in our website with regards to becoming a member. So b10kproject.com if you want to join the largest community of investors who actively fund Black-owned businesses. So without any further ado, though, we want to get our pens and papers together because we have a special guest this evening. You all know that I am on the business buying thing, especially within Black America. Does anybody know how many businesses are bought and sold each year? A little trivia pursuit. How many businesses are bought and sold each year? And don't go to Google to check. No cheating. Put it in. If anybody knows that. Check YouTube. Hey, everybody in YouTube, don't forget to like the video. Hello, Facebook, Twitter. Does anybody know? I don't see any responses. Tawana, do you know?
I don't know how many are bought every year.
Bought and sold every year? 10,000, a little bit over 10,000 are bought and sold every year. And most people know that there's going to be a huge wealth transfer in the next couple of decades, about $68 trillion. A lot of that is going to be businesses. A lot of these businesses are run by parents and grandparents, and their millennial and Gen Z kids and grandkids are not going to want these businesses. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there. Oh, Jared got it right in YouTube, 10,000. Yeah. So this is the point of us having some of these conversations, because we have an opportunity to start thinking about buying businesses. Some of these businesses, if they were owned by people of other ethnicities and now they're owned by us, now they would be Black owned. We could be in position to get more government contracts, Fortune 500 contracts, all sorts of stuff. So Tawana, you also took Curtis's course as well. What's your thought? Because you had not had a lot of experience with thinking about buying businesses before Curtis's course, from what I remember, the conversations we had. What are some of your thoughts about us buying businesses before we bring on Joe?
So, and I've shared this with the group since my journey began. I think it is an absolutely amazing thing that we are able to do. And I think we underestimate the ability to be able to do so. So as I shared, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be actually closing on a business. And so super, super excited to have the first one under my belt. And it is the thing that I have found that is my thing. So, you always come across that thing that's your thing. This is my thing. So of all the things I do, this is my thing. And so I thank Curtis Witt for his mentorship throughout this process and this journey, because I have learned so much, and I have realized that the skills I already had were perfect for this. They absolutely were. And so I think it's something that others should look into and consider. As you know, we kind of partner with Curtis Witt to offer his business buying mastermind. And he actually just had a meeting on Friday. Several of our members were there, so that made me smile. This is a good way to build wealth. We keep talking about this generational wealth. I laughed the other day. I think I said, we need to put it on a t-shirt, because everywhere I go, I hear it. But not often are we hearing all of the ways you can actually obtain it. Mm-hmm. And so this is a way. This is the way. And so I do recommend people consider it, learn more about it, either through us, through someone else, pick up a book. We've got, several books we can start putting in our newsletter. That could be super helpful to you. But I, let's turn it over to introduce Joe, because we can talk for days, but this man has done the thing. Done the thing.
So I was listening, there's a podcast that I listened to, and Mr. Joe Anderson was one of the guests on the podcast. It's a podcast where this gentleman interviews people who buys businesses, and some of them are working on their first business and others have bought many businesses. And Joe Anderson has bought businesses that have revenues of $1.6 billion. So he has been buying businesses for decades. He is like somebody we can really kind of talk to, ask these questions, and, just get more knowledge about this. And ultimately, we want to be able to put these things into action. So, Mr. Anderson, welcome.
Thank you very much, Cherie, and happy to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. So why don't we start from the beginning? Tell us a little bit about yourself and, your background.
Well, happy to do that. Grew up in Topeka, Kansas, went through schools there and through a number of activities, wound up going to the United States Military Academy at West Point. So I graduated from West Point, went off to Vietnam a couple of times and did other things, went back to teach there and so forth, got a couple of master's degrees, and then got recruited by General Motors and Ford, wound up leaving the Army and joining General Motors, spent 13 years operating in manufacturing operations in General Motors after 13 years on active duty in the Army, and then got recruited again and accepted an offer to join an entrepreneur, a private equity guy. Back then, they weren't that active and aggressive, but he was buying companies and asked me to join him, and I did, and ran his company until I got the bug to do my own thing and bought my first company in 1994. And so I've been owning and operating companies since 1994, truly a serial entrepreneur, and parallel to that have served on a number of New York Stock Exchange boards, have done other things like the last 6 years, I been on the Federal Reserve Bank board here in Detroit for the Chicago Bank, and last 4 years chaired the Federal Reserve Bank board and so forth. So a lot of other things in addition to running companies, and I will elaborate further on what difference that makes for you as an entrepreneur if we choose to go there.
Great, great. So first of all, you have like a very long history, and thank you for your service as well with regards to the military. Talk to us a little bit about some of the companies that you have purchased. Give us an idea, were they all in the same industry, different industries?
Well, as I say to people, I've been very eclectic, not by design, but that's the way things happened. And I chose to take on those opportunities and so forth. So having been in General Motors and in manufacturing in General Motors, my first company was an automotive supplier business. And then others followed along that way and worked for various companies that supplied General Motors, Ford, Honda, Chrysler, et cetera, and owned and operated those businesses. But to the point of being eclectic, someone came to me with a potential automotive supplier opportunity, but it was located in Korea. And so I said, well, how do I do that? And why would I do that? And I must have answered the question. So I took over that company in Korea, and it had an affiliated operation in China. So that was another business there. And so I did that. Ultimately, also worked in the businesses that supply the heavy equipment world, like Caterpillar. I did some machining for aerospace companies like SpaceX, so forth. I'm getting ready to launch a new business in July with the railroad industry. So I guess you can see that it's very eclectic.
Yeah.
But the key to all of those is that they have what I would characterize as a manufacturing foundation or orientation to them. They all have not been truly manufacturing, but the tools and skills and experiences that I learned in manufacturing, I brought to those businesses. And I quickly will say that others have come my way that didn't fill my background and skill base. And so I was, I think, smart enough to turn those down and say, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Very good. So Joe, your experience from an education and career standpoint is very impressive. But what skills make a good business buying entrepreneur? Someone who wants to get into this, what skills are a must that they have to have?
Well, I think first of all, and most importantly, you need to know what your passion is and your skill is. And so, Tawana, without even knowing the business you're about to launch, I would imagine is something that fits you. And that's a very important notion or concept. And so when I was at West Point and made the decision to go into the infantry, it's because I like working with and leading people. And so I didn't go into the armor, I didn't with tanks, I didn't go into the artillery, I didn't go into engineering, I chose the infantry. So when I left the Army and went into General Motors, it was in manufacturing. Guess what? That's where the people are. And you're about leading and supporting people. So I think the first thing I would share to any and everyone is know who you are, know what you like, what turns you on, and let that be the focus and purpose about what you're doing. Because I like leading and working with people. I go out on the factory floor. I'm so much more turned on than sitting in my office because I'm interacting with people out on the factory floor. That answer your question a little bit?
It does indeed. Thank you.
So my question then I kind of want to flip a little bit and ask you, what skills did you take from the Army and GM and the private equity firm? Like, what skills did you master in those employment situations in order to bring those over into buying businesses?
Well, you know, I will say very proudly that West Point is the #1 leadership institution in the world, certainly better than Navy. And
uh-oh, that may be a challenge.
but the point I'm making is that's how I was educated and trained at West Point, is about leading people. So that talent, that skill I brought with me into all of the activities and operations that I have undertaken. Turning back to the question earlier about, well, what's the #1 skill and need? If I had to do it over again, that #1 skill and need I would put more emphasis on is finance. And so I hire good finance people and they do those things for me. And I know enough to look at from my board experiences, look at a balance sheet, look at a profit and loss statement and so forth. But I can go out on the factory floor and really look around and see and understand what's going on in operations. Finance people can look at numbers on a piece of paper and have that same skill and talent. I quickly say I have hired people that can do that. If I had to do it over some years back, I would learn more about that myself. And I would encourage everybody, because you live and die in addition to your product and service, how the financials come out, and knowing that and managing to those financials is absolutely critical.
Yeah, that's so important. And my mother's a bookkeeper, and I used to work with her for many years. And I was the financial person that would sit down with people and help them read and understand their P&L. And I was sitting down with a woman who had close to $1 million business at the time. This was several years ago. And she said to me, you know, if I had to go and take a class in order to do this, I would never do it, because I wouldn't want people to know that I have this nice sized business and I don't know what any of these numbers mean. And I think that happens a lot in entrepreneurship and in business, where we're kind of embarrassed to say that we don't understand the numbers, or we're not sure what questions to ask. So because of that, we think, okay, as long as there's revenue coming in, then and I have some sort of profit, then I'm okay, versus asking ourselves, how do we really figure out what skills are missing within us and figure out how to actually acquire those skills. Go ahead, Tawana.
And in addition to acquiring, we talk about this when we talk about capital raising for our founders. Sometimes you're building that team around you, right? So in addition to hiring the right people, right, Joe now has the experts that are doing it, but then they also are able to give him the knowledge and he's learning along the way as well. So building that team, that winning team behind you and alongside of you to help you to help continue to build successes. Joe, so in the business that I'm buying, I'm going to be an absentee owner. My role will be to go in and make process improvements and efficiencies, but I won't be day to day in the business. Sounds like you work day to day in your businesses, probably for at least a period of time. Have you always done that? Or have you ever been an absentee owner?
Well, in reality, I've owned multiple businesses at the same time. And so I have not had the capability of being in each of those businesses day to day. And so more likely than not, I have been someone that has put management in place to own and operate those businesses for me the same every day. And then ultimately, my game plan and strategy, fundamental to what you all are talking about in wealth creation, is to give those managers the opportunity to buy those businesses from me that they have been operating for me. And I have seven people now that have been in Tag Holdings that now own and operate their own companies. And that's what I'm about.
Fantastic.
That is wonderful. You changed lives. You literally changed the trajectory of their lives. These were people who were just doing the job and now they're owners. Wow.
And what I've said to a number of people over the course of time, and my parents, it was about having a job so that you could pay your bills day to day. When I was in General Motors, I had enough salary and bonus to have lifestyle. So I could have multiple cars and I could take my nice vacations and so forth. As you talk about wealth creation for yourself, then that comes with owning and operating businesses. And here's another well-kept secret. Owning and operating the business and so forth is nice, but the wealth creation comes when you sell the business.
Right.
And I can remember back in the 80s and 90s, an African-American who was owning a business on the Black Enterprise list, sold that business and received all kind of criticism for selling that business. But the recognition and reality of wealth creation is now when that capital and cash is in your hand, you have wealth. Sitting on the factory floor, it is products sitting on the factory floor.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit that's kind of tough for us because, and we've had this conversation within the 10K project where we're funding businesses, like tech businesses and other types of businesses, and then they grow. And then the exit plan for that company is to sell. And even though as shareholders, we want them to sell, there's a part of us that really cares about the community that's like, but if we sell, how do we keep our wealth within the community? What are some of your thoughts with regards to that?
But the key to that, Cherie, is the people who are operating those businesses for me day to day are African Americans. And so when I sell those businesses, they own and operate the businesses and keep them in their community, their personal family and lives, and in the Black community. So that's my strategy about succession, is having African Americans run the businesses for me day to day, and then be the key to my exit strategy.
I love that. And I'm glad that you clarified that for us so that, people will understand that this is still staying in the community. It's still staying in the Black community, and we're still able to build generational wealth from it. So
all 7 of those individuals I was referring to are African Americans.
Great.
I regret to say African American men, because I'm not finding enough women in manufacturing. But
don't regret that.
you know, we're gonna solve that problem eventually too.
Yeah,
you know, African American men have African American women and children who they'll teach these same skills to, and then that next generation will be the business owners. Maybe they'll take over the business. It'll become a family business.
Yes,
and you will not be surprised at how many women-owned businesses are white women who've taken them over for their husbands. So to your point, we've got to get Black women married to Black men.
Ooh, we're not touching that. We are not touching that at all.
Who can take over those Black-owned businesses?
That's it. That's right.
Yeah. I see in YouTube, I either see it's Raphael or Charles here saying facts. So if it's Charles, definitely married Black woman. So, but I will say this as well. We have between all of our social media and the people on here, 60 people watching. If there is a Black woman who is here tonight, who is interested in being one of those women, look, I reached out to Mr. Anderson. He's a wonderful man. I'm sure if you came to me and said, hey, Cherie, can I do an introduction? I'd like to consider being one of those Black women, you know. If somebody raised their hand, I don't know who raised their hand in Zoom, but yeah, look, reach out to me, because that woman, that first woman that Mr. Anderson takes under his wing may end up coming from the 10K Project family. So yeah, so I did want to go back to the funding thing though, because you bought overall like companies that have 1.6 billion in revenues. And some people may gasp at that and say, I don't know how I could get $10,000 in order to buy a business, or 20,000, much less the amount of money that's needed for some of these 7- and 8-figure deals. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and about like how you even funded that first business?
I sure can, and the lessons learned from that. That first business that I bought was done all with my personal savings and bank debt. And I learned the hard way that an improperly balanced balance sheet is asking for trouble. So I had more debt than equity and a balance. And so when things did not go perfectly well, that company was in trouble, and that company went into bankruptcy. So I've been as far down as having been in bankruptcy, as well as all the successes. But if you learn from those experiences and survive those experiences, it's okay.
I love that.
And so having learned from that experience, as I've acquired other businesses, I've gone out for investors, friends, and family that have participated and supported me. And the key point that I'm making there is, if Tawana was about to do that, and she had particular talent and skill in her business, and there are other people that respect that and value that, then they would put in money to support her making that acquisition. And so that's what I've done any number of times. And I will be very honest and say they all have not been successful, but enough have been successful that investors will come back and participate again and again. And so I've raised friends and family kind of monies from people that are more friends. I don't have the family that can do that, but I've raised, you know, as much as $4 million from individuals who know me and want to invest in, because they have confidence with my manufacturing background that I can be successful at the companies that I'm operating in day to day.
That's amazing. You know, I often talk about the fact that I don't think that everybody should be an entrepreneur, that there are many of us who strategically would do well to stay within our Fortune 500 companies and become investors like what you're talking about, Mr. Anderson, where, you have an extra $25,000 or $50,000. And when the right person comes to you with the right opportunity, you're able to be one of those investors. Tell us your thoughts with regards to that, because I kind of think that we need different people at different stages of life and in their investment journey in order to really build wealth and buy the businesses that we're talking about.
And I would absolutely agree. And risk taking and the things that go on with being a business owner and entrepreneur is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so it depends, and it may be your personal circumstances. And if you have children that are going into school, into college and so forth and so on, putting money at risk may not be the right thing for you to do.
Yeah.
My personal situation led me to have the capacity to do that. And I was able to take those kinds of challenges and risks. Again, they all have not been successful, but enough have been successful that people are willing to invest with me and give me their support in acquiring businesses over a period of years.
Well, we have a couple of people who have written comments here in Zoom. Kimberly is saying, I am a Black woman building a construction company I own and would love to learn the process of exiting through selling. So, Mr. Anderson, do you have any books or resources maybe that Kimberly should consider to learn how to build a company and then exit it successfully?
I have not written a book. I've been told I need to.
Oh, you need to.
And I will do that. But the specifics specifically about having a company be of value and therefore sellable in the marketplace and so forth, like a construction company or a manufacturing company or so forth. It's all about, what are the earnings of that business and what's the cash flow of that business and what's the market potential of that business for growth. And all of these factors come into consideration where somebody wants to acquire it and take it on for the future. In cases of the gentlemen that were working for me, they were running those businesses day to day. So they knew who the customers were and the customers were comfortable with them. They were successful or profitable businesses over time sufficiently that banks would lend them money. And they would put their own money and bank debt and investors and so forth, and therefore were able to acquire those businesses from me and take them on for themselves. So one fellow, I hired him in 2005 to run a business in a joint venture with Honda. And then Honda said, I have a second company in 2007 and another plant, and I have a third company in 2008 and a third plant. And so he was running those businesses for me day to day. Again, back to the question earlier, am I in there day to day? No, I am not. I'm the owner and operator and hold monthly staff meetings to review financials and performance and quality and safety and all those kind of things. But after he ran those businesses from 2005 to 2010, we had grown those businesses from that first operation of about 200 million to about 700 million by 2010. He bought them from me with the bank support and the customer support. And now those businesses are operating under his ownership with revenue of about $1.2 billion. And so that's the way I have done this on several occasions. I just sold one of my companies in March to the individual that was owning and was operating that for me day to day. He joined me. I'd known him for a number of years. He finally joined me in December of 2019, ran it all 2020, worked on it very hard 2021, and finally got it purchased in 2022.
That's wonderful.
amazing.
And Kimmy, there is a book, it's called Built to Sell by
Mhm.
John Warrillow, I think is his last name. That's a really good book. You may want to pick it up and read it. It'll really help you with that process of exiting.
Yeah. I might have another resource for you as well, Kimberly. So info@the10kproject.com. I got to dig it up and I'll send it to you. Ron is saying here, great conversation. I am in the process of acquiring a manufacturing company. I'd love to have a conversation with you later, Mr. Anderson, about this. Do you do any kind of consulting or anything like that for people?
I don't, but I talk to people all the time. So
Okay.
Cherie will tell you how to get hold of me and we can go from there.
All righty then. Look, hook up here. Todd Capital, this is Charles most likely, is saying in YouTube, for someone looking to get into acquisition entrepreneurship, what is a good business to start with?
That depends again totally on the individual and what their skill and or interest and or passion is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's that I keep coming back to doing what fits you. There are opportunities out there, but if it's not something you know something about or want to learn and grow in, it's not the right thing for you in my view. And so that's how I functioned and operated. So again, find out and focus on things that fit what you like to do and who you are.
Do you suggest people buy businesses that are failing and do a turnaround, or do you only focus on businesses that have a strong cash flow and balance sheet, that are strong businesses when you purchase them?
My approach to that question is I look for okay businesses that I can make good.
Ooh, I like that.
I don't want a bad business that I have to put a lot of time and energy and resources to make it okay and hopefully make it good. And so if there is a company that's cash flow positive, but not fully invested in their marketplace to take advantage of that, and I can put lean manufacturing, Six Sigma processes in its manufacturing floor to take cost out, and then use my contacts, network relationships, because I've been a supplier to Honda, General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, et cetera. So if it's an automotive supply company and I can use those contacts and relationships to open doors that this company may not have been able to open to, that's the kind of opportunity I'm looking for so that I can take it to places it has not been.
Perfect.
Very
So
good.
I'm going to share my screen here. Mark Anderson asked, can you reveal the YouTube podcast you found Mr. Joe off of? So I'm going to share my screen here and show you my YouTube here. So it's a guy named John Stoddard here. And this guy interviews people who buy businesses. He's in, they call it M&A entrepreneurs. So if you put in John Stoddard here, you can hear not only that, but he's got many, many interviews of all sorts of people who are buying businesses. And he's a great interviewer as well. It's something you can listen to as you're exercising and things like that.
And as you can already tell, when John Stoddard or Cherie calls, I say, okay, I'll do it.
Yes, I was so grateful too, because I'm like, oh my goodness, this is,
But particularly for African Americans and so forth.
Thank you.
Of course, my first question is, where were you all in 1994 when I needed money?
I'm sorry.
We're here right now. If you need any more, you know where to come now. If you need any more.
I do know where to come now.
I was in high school. I didn't have any money.
I want to also add that, here at the 10K Project, we've been really focused on this business buying journey, and we've partnered with an amazing mentor, Curtis Witt, who is hosting our business buying masterminds. So if this conversation has piqued your interest, even a little bit, if you were already interested and now this one's kind of taking it over the top because you're hearing more about it, please send us an email at info@the10kproject.com. And we'll connect you with the next mastermind. Actually, one is getting ready to start soon. And so, it's an amazing skill to have, because even some of the people that went through the last mastermind, they may just be interested in being investors, right? So when, like Joe said, he's looking for money from the family and friends, some people just want to do that, right? But now they have learned about the entire process to even know where they fit. Then you have other people like myself that kind of got bit by the bug, right? Because all of the concepts of buying a business are things that naturally click inside my brain. And so, I thought I was only going to be the investor, and now I actually want to be the owner. I want to be an absentee owner though, because we got this to build, but so I don't want to be pulled in too many directions. But if this is something even remotely you're interested in, please give us a chance to, explain it all to you and expose you to it, and then you can make the decision on if this is something for you.
Yeah. So I want to bring in just Tawana. Last week we had Shane come on and talk about, building your portfolio. And I just want to tie it into something he said last week. One of the pillars he talked about was cash flow.
Cash flow, absolutely.
And if you remember last week, if you were here, he talked about the fact that there are like four different pillars that you have. One of them I just remember being cash flow, because I don't have much of anything in the cash flowing column. That's why I zeroed in on that. And then, there were three other pillars as well. But owning a business can be a great way for you to have that cash flowing pillar. And I was on Friday, I was networking at a golf tournament with a gentleman who's like, his whole goal is to get $20,000 a month in cash flow. And then he's going to be able to retire and do other things. And he told me he's halfway there. He's into real estate, So, besides real estate and dividend stocks, tomorrow night is a dividend stock investing webinar that we're having. Buying businesses is another way for you to start building that cash flowing portion of your portfolio. I think that's important. Go ahead, Tawana, before there's a couple other questions here.
Let me make a point about cash flow.
Yes.
When you talk about business ownership, everyone talks about revenue and profit. The lifeblood of your business is cash flow. Because if you're not having positive cash flow every week, every day, every month to pay the bills, because cash flow is what covers cost. And so if they're, again, back to that financial understanding background, understand where to put the emphasis and priorities. When I look at businesses, I want to measure the EBITDA, the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and so forth and so on, because that's how businesses are sold or bought. But the key to the success of a business every day, every week, every month is, are you cash flow positive?
That's right.
And so after your expenses, do you have enough cash, not profit, cash, to pay the bills, to get you to the next month?
So
just like your personal checking account, by the way.
Right.
Cash flow.
Yeah. So just to add to that, there are some businesses that have a lot of accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is when you sell something, but the person hasn't paid you yet. So you have an invoice out there. And there are some businesses, when going back to my mother's bookkeeping business, that had so much in AR that they were cash flow negative. They weren't able to pay the bills. They were scrambling every month. Or they were trying to find, a bank that would lend them money. And, banks, banks don't like to lend you money unless you don't need it. There is some truth to that. I've spoken with bankers that have said that as well. So as you're thinking about buying businesses, if you see a business that has accounts receivable on it, that's one of the things that you want to be aware of.
And let me say this about that. In a particular business opportunity that I'm looking at now, the customer says, we will certainly work with you, but we have 90-day payment terms.
Mm-hmm.
That means if you provide the product or service, they have 90 days to pay you.
That's right.
Now, this is a multi-billion-dollar company,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to use my cash
Mm-hmm.
to fund their costs. And so know very quickly and aggressively what are the payment terms associated with the business or service you're providing. And 30 days is nice now, but 90 days is very, very unmanageable. And so you can make a decision to do business with that company or not.
Mm-hmm.
But those are all the kinds of questions and issues you have to wrestle with.
Right, right. So do you have another question, Tawana?
Any other questions in the Q&A? We want to make sure you guys get all your questions asked.
Absolutely.
While we have this amazing man here today sharing some secrets with us.
So I have another question here from YouTube, again from Charles. He had asked about your how your military background helped in life and business, but I wanted to ask how, we talked about your military background, but I would like to find out how, like, the private equity company you worked with, how did that help you with regards to being able to evaluate businesses and even be able to think about the businesses that you were starting to purchase?
Well, one of the things that you quickly figure out is that there is levels of cost to money.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get money from a private equity firm, one of the things that you quickly will understand is that equity leads to ownership in your business. And because it is private equity lending you money for ownership as opposed to debt. Banks lend you money based on debt, and there's a certain interest rate associated with that debt. And I learned a lot about that serving on the Federal Reserve Board here in Detroit. But in terms of equity and ownership, that's a different kind of return for that investor. And that's what you all, I presume, are lending more toward equity returns as opposed to debt and interest returns and so forth. And they can vary. And so what I went out for friends and family kind of lending, it was equity kind of lending. Now it was passive investors and so forth. But when the profits were split up, if I made $1 million and I had friends and family investors that had given me equity related to that, so that I had to give them 20% of or 30% of that $1 million equity, as opposed to if the bank had loaned me money and I made that $1 million, then whatever that amount I loaned from the bank, I would give them their 3, 4, 5, 6% on that money, as opposed to the 30% of equity from friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
So totally different ball game in terms of the cost of money. And so understand that when you get engaged and involved with investing. And when your group invests, are you lending money or are you trying to participate as equity owners? What's the answer to that question, Tawana Cherie?
Equity.
Equity.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So I always try to get as much lending from banks, but not so much that I can't cover it like I did the first time. But bank debt is much cheaper than equity lending. Now, there's another level of lending in between. It's called mezzanine lending. And so the bank debt is the cheapest. Mezzanine lending is at a higher interest rate than debt from the bank, but it is not equity. And so all three of those are kinds of borrowing and or acquiring capital that allows you to do the things that you've done. And so my first choice is to get bank debt, and bank will lend based on the assets that are available for them to secure their loan. They would like for you to guarantee the loan. And I did that in the past. I don't do that anymore because I have enough history and track record that I say to the bank, I don't guarantee loans anymore.
That's big. That is big, y'all.
Yeah, that's big. That's boss
Huge.
move right there.
That is boss territory at that point.
And then, but mezzanine, if I can't get enough equity and I don't have enough bank debt and I need, a little more money to make it all work properly, then I may do mezzanine lending, mezzanine borrowing, which is higher than the bank debt, but still not equity kinds of returns. So that when I make a profit and determine my EBITDA for the year, I'm paying bank interest rates, I'm paying mezzanine interest rates, but I don't have to give away equity kinds of returns.
Yeah. Or is saying, can you explain guaranteed loans? I think.
Oh, that's very easy.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. What the bank will say to you is, we will lend you money based on the assets that are available, and we want a personal guarantee from you, the borrower. The personal guarantee from you, the borrower, means that if the assets, so if the company goes under or doesn't have the cash flow and or profit to support it, if the company goes into bankruptcy or goes out of business, if you've given a personal guarantee, it means the bank has the assets of the business and your personal assets to secure the loan. So your home, your car, all of those are part of your personal guarantee.
Yeah, that's bad.
I don't know, or is it like taking out a helicopter against your home? I'm not familiar with that verbiage, but it basically just means that if you default on the loan, they're coming after all the collateral, all the assets that you pledged for that loan. So your home, your cars, your,
jewelry, whatever.
Yes, anything that you pledge.
Bottom line is they're gonna get their money.
Yes, it's not a HELOC. No, it's not it's called a personal guarantee. So it's not a HELOC. Charles is asking in YouTube. Charles has some great questions.
We need Charles to log into the Zoom next time so he can ask all these questions.
Yeah, we're gonna bring Charles to the Zoom.
Yeah, let's bring Charles into the Zoom.
So Charles is like doing a lot of stuff. So, and Raph is here. I know Raph is here in Zoom. Charles is asking, what are your plans for the future in business?
Would you believe right now that I don't have any companies? And that the one I sold last month in March was the last one. I sold one last November, and I like to talk about the good ones. The company I sold last November, I bought it in 2016. I operated it until 2021. Now that was a strategic buyer. There are individuals like the guys that are operating the businesses for me day to day. That's my focus, that's my priority. But in this particular company, a strategic buyer came along and says, that product of that business, that service of that business fits us. And as a strategic buyer, they're willing to pay more for it because they get more return for it. And so I bought that company in 2016. In 2021, I sold it to a strategic buyer for 5.5 times the price I paid for it in 2016.
That is great.
And so I've told you about the bankruptcy, so you know I'm not always successful,
Right.
but there are some good ones. And then the one that I sold in March was to the individual that was running it for me. He now owns that business and so forth. But if you ask, well, what am I going to do? I have another company that will start up in July. I have 2 others that I'm in discussions and negotiations with a supplier and so forth. So by the end of this calendar year, I could have 4 companies again.
Wow.
And that's what I do. And I've been at it long enough, and I have enough of a track record and reputation that individuals come to me with opportunities, et cetera. And so you gain that reputation and you get those potentials and so forth. And the company that I will close on in July is not in manufacturing at all, because when I went to that parent company and I introduced myself, and they said, well, I know you do manufacturing, but do you have to do manufacturing? And I said, well, no, what do you need? And they outlined what they need. And it was something related enough to manufacturing that I knew I could do it well. And so the number one opportunity in doing a deal is to solve a customer's problem. And this customer had something that they were having trouble with, and they wanted somebody to take on that challenge. And with my lean Six Sigma background and operating businesses, what they were asking me to consider and address, I was very comfortable with. Now, again, I've had others where I'm saying, you know, I've had people say, well, here's a good search firm for you that can help you, and you can acquire this search firm and source people and so forth. That's just not what I do, not what I want to do. And so I don't do those kind of things. And so it's really about the fit for you. And that word applies more than in business.
So Aura asked the question I was getting ready to ask is there a formula for how long you hold and decide to sell? Like when you're buying it, do you know in your mind, okay, it's going to take 2 years to get this one to where, you know, I've built the value of it enough to be ready to sell it? Or does sometime it take a little longer? Like what's the thought process around the timing of selling?
And the answer to that question is, I don't approach them that way. Like this business that I sold to the individual in March, I had acquired that business in 2010 in a joint venture. That joint venture did not work out. And so I acquired the assets and resources from that joint venture partner, like in 2015. And then I kept running that business until 2019, until this individual came along that I put in charge of it to run it day to day. And he made it more successful and more profitable and got bank sourcing to buy it from me. And so that's 2010 to 2021.
Okay.
Would I want a business to have a business that long? Probably not. Am I concerned about it? You know, not really. Because my mission in life is to put individuals of color in charge of owning those opportunities and creating wealth for themselves.
Well, if you're looking for 2 more children, Tawana and I are available.
I hear you.
Tawana and I are available.
And you're not the first to make that offer.
I just want to be called when you need more money. That's all I want.
Oh my goodness.
And Aura Witherspoon says she's there too. What other questions do you have?
Yes. So we have a couple of additional questions that have been waiting in YouTube. Jamsky is asking, what's your take on seller financing?
I have done seller financing in some of these deals. And so I'm very comfortable with that. And that's about knowing the individual that I'm helping buy the business from me, knowing the outlook for that business for him going forward. And therefore, am I comfortable with doing that? And so what I've done is do seller financing of 25%. And he will pay me 25% of that 25% in year 4, and then the remaining 75% in year 5. That's the formula that I've used in terms of seller financing. And I have received my funds in the 3 times I've done that. I prefer not to do seller financing if the individual can do it. But if that's what it takes to get it done, that's my legacy. That's what I'm committed to doing. And I've had people that have gone out of their way to make things work for me in the past. So I'm very comfortable with it.
Nice. Kenneth said, is mezzanine borrowing the same as hard money?
No, it is hard money, but not the same as hard money. And it depends on your definition of hard money. Again, mezzanine money, mezzanine finances is, as the term says, in the middle of equity and debt. So mezzanine is that middle money. It costs more than bank debt, but it is less costly than equity, and therefore mezzanine. So if you're getting bank debt at 4 or 5%, whatever the number is, your mezzanine lending is going to be 8, 9, 10, maybe 12%, whatever it is. That is probably cheaper than equity, that if you sell the business and get a return, that equity is a percentage of the business, not a percentage of debt.
Right. Anonymous is saying, I keep hearing Lean Six Sigma. Do you recommend that someone interested in managing or running a business complete Lean Six Sigma? Which belt should you aim for? How can someone practice Six Sigma skills if not in a managerial or boss position?
As always, if you have the time and inclination, do it. But most importantly, if you don't have it, hire it. Mm-hmm. And so I hire black belts as opposed to me going to class to be a black belt.
Okay.
I hire financial people because I didn't do that. But I've been around manufacturing long enough in my 13 years in General Motors and in my years of owning my own companies that I don't have to be a Six Sigma or black belt to know when manufacturing operations or processes are lean and are efficient, because I've been through the training and doing of those things and had presentations made to me about doing those things. And so depending where you are in your life cycle and your availability of time and energy, you certainly won't hurt you to do it, but you don't have to do it if you can hire people to do it for you, but at least know enough so that you understand what it means.
Yeah, I love that answer, because so often we get in our own way, right? Because we say we don't know how to do that, so we can't do this. You know, it's not possible for me to buy a business because I'm not smart enough, or I don't have enough money, or I don't know how to run a business. You know, all of those things we do to talk ourselves down. But you just heard the best advice I think we could have ever received today is you don't have to know the thing, because you can hire the person that knows the thing. And once you remember that, I think you'll start to see the world differently and realize where you really fit in it. And so, you know, as we kind of close out this session, I really want people to start believing in what you can do and do more I can and I will than I can't. Because this thing is doable, right? Mm-hmm. I am living proof that it is doable. And I went into this as a skeptic. If you guys remember when Curtis first came to talk to us, I was like, this dude, okay, whatever. Like, you know, like there's no way I'm gonna be able to buy a business, because I said the same thing, right? I don't have $1 million to buy a business, right? I can't buy a business, but we have to start believing in ourselves, because these things are possible and it's obtainable for everyday people like us, right? And we need to start exposing ourselves to the opportunities that are right there in front of us, because we don't believe in ourselves enough. Sometimes we miss them. So I'm just going to ask you all, believe a little bit in yourself, a little bit more than you did yesterday, and tomorrow even a little bit more, and start looking to where this journey of wealth building really can take you.
Yeah. And I also want to add that anything that you hear is a Google search away, a book away, you know. So with business, you want to know at least the basics of anything. So that way, when you're interviewing people, you can have a conversation and just make sure that they have the skills that you're looking for, you know, to help you with the business. So yeah,
and just make
I
sure they have
I'm
the
sorry.
skills that you're looking
I'm hearing
for,
something.
you
Did
know,
somebody
to
pull
help
up
you.
the YouTube? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Um, so, you know, just kind of thinking about that as well. Like, I don't know what a black belt in Lean Six Sigma is, but when I get off tonight, I am going to at least look it up just so I can know what was being discussed.
And what Lean and Six Sigma means is when you look at a manufacturing process, if the steps that are taken or the movement of material is such that you can shorten that number of steps and or reduce the material availability, then all of that adds to the efficiency with which you engage in the operation. And so when I walk into a factory and I see an individual having to walk, like one of my operations, I walked in the factory and the individual took a product and walked 10 steps to put it on the scales, and then went back to the line and continued and took 10 steps again to put it on the scales. The question I ask is, why not put the scales by the person?
That's right. That's right.
That's lean thinking, efficient thinking, so that the amount of time, what do those 10 steps take? 5 seconds? Add 5 seconds every hour. How many times that happens an hour? Every day, every week, every month. That's cost.
Right. So you've got
That's
saved
common
money,
sense.
you've got work comp claims reduced, and that's a practice. So Lean Sigma is a practice that's used in other industries also. We use it in healthcare. And so it's all about that process and efficiency improvement. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, you can even use it in business and how you operate a business, even a business like ours, Cherie. There's room for some efficiencies.
And just think about it, you know, in your own kitchen. Where do I put the pot holders? I don't put them in the cabinet across the way. I put them by the stove.
Yeah.
That's just all you're thinking about is how to have efficient access to what I need to get the job done.
Yeah. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Y'all know this is one of my favorite topics. Tawana's grinning from ear to ear, so she's happy too. And
well, you know, they always say people have to hear things kind of in threes, right, or multiple times. And so we've been talking about this, right? And it's nothing like reinforcing it with someone like Joe to come in, you know, who's done it for years and a lot of businesses under his belt. And I think this episode is going to hit people a little differently. It's almost like the 1-2 punch, right? This is the second punch, to where it's going to kind of make them think, well, maybe there's something to this, right? Maybe I need to explore this a little bit more. And so, you know, the10kproject.com is our website. If you're interested in learning more about anything that we do here, including the Business Buying Masterminds, please reach out to us at info@the10kproject.com. And as it relates to the Business Buying Mastermind, you can even reach out to me directly, trivers@the10kproject.com, because like I said, this is now a passion of mine. It has ignited something in me that I didn't know existed. So I'm super excited. And, you know, I just want to thank you, Joe, for coming and talking to us and sharing your story. What you've done for me this evening is you've allowed me to look at this on such a bigger level, that it's not just about the building of the wealth for me. It's also, when I sell that business, I need to be purposeful about who I sell it to. That's my biggest takeaway of all the things you said. That's the thing that resonated for me is I need to be purposeful about how I continue to build wealth in my community.
And you know, and it can work for different people in different ways. I mean, if you have a family, then you're not about selling it. You want to grow it and make it a legacy for your family and the next generation. But there are many generations that don't have that need or desire, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember before I bought my first company, I went to Boston to talk to a private equity guy. The first question he asked me was, well, what's your exit strategy? And I said, what the hell are you talking about? I'm trying to get into business, because I didn't know that to create wealth,
right,
you have to get beyond owning and operating to make it successful enough. Now, if you take it public, you know, that's a way to create wealth, but also exiting it and buying the next one and the next one and the next one. And I've, you know, this one I'm going to do in July will probably be my 16th company.
Wow.
And that's okay. Now, I hasten to say to you, my first company was a bankruptcy. And if you ask me what's my batting average for you sports fans and so forth, I'm probably 500 or so, meaning half of them have not been big successes. But those that are, I love to talk about. And it keeps me coming back. And I have a good time doing it. And I have more fun sharing it with folks like you all. And so go for it.
And I want to thank you also. I just want to thank Joe for being transparent and telling us about the bankruptcy also, because people need to hear that, right? Is that there are going to be bumps in the road, and but you didn't give up. You could have said this is not for me and moved on to the next thing, but you didn't.
And again, what I learned from that is all bank debt is not good. And so I went the friends and family route and bank debt and mezzanine and all of those that have allowed me to raise the money I need to do the deals that I do. So I don't shy away from bank debt. I just have the appropriate amount of bank debt. And I've done mezzanine on a number of occasions, and certainly friends and family for equity.
Yeah. And I also wanted to piggyback off Tawana, when you talked about having a 500 batting average. You know, that is in line with all of the other types of investments that are out there. So, you know, this is investing where you will have some misses and, you know, or just some that sell without a huge profit, right? And that's okay too. But if you build a portfolio, then that is how the rich get richer. They don't just buy one and quit. So yeah. Leslie is saying, Joe, you seem like a very nice guy. I'm happy for your success. So we were happy to have Joe here.
And again, happy to share what I've learned and experienced. And if you took something away from today, then it's a success for me.
Well, I did. Definitely.
I did. That's right.
I did. Yes. And we would love to have you back, maybe, you know, next year sometime.
I accept.
Absolutely. I'm going to stay in touch with you so that way we can get you on the calendar again. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. dividend stock investing masterclass, and at 8 p.m. Bet on Black pitch.
Bet on Black pitch to this week's Bet on Black company is in the agriculture industry.
Yes.
That's the hint.
But they got a twist.
And they may do something in, they're in the agriculture industry. However, the solution they've created crosses over into the cannabis industry. So so you want to come live 8 p.m. if you're a member. It's a member only event, Bet on Black pitch. If you're not a member, the10kproject.com, become a member, and then you too can attend this Bet on Black pitch. But tomorrow is really, really good. And then next week, I got another 1-2 punch. So I've got the agriculture this week, and then next week complements it. So I'm doing a 1-2 punch. So you
All
gotta
right.
be a member if you want to come to these pitches. These entrepreneurs are not playing, and we are not playing because we are out here trying to raise capital for them.
That's
so
right.
we're
That
gonna do
is
this
right.
thing.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. We will see you tomorrow night. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, again. And good night, everybody.
Good night.